in the quiet suburb of San Antonio, Texas, where the air is thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and the night sky is usually studded with stars, there's a tale that stirs whispers and shivers among the locals. This story is about a legend that's more than just a story. It's a chilling reminder of what might be lurking just beyond the edge of the familiar. It's a tale so spine-tingling that it has managed to creep into the everyday conversations of teenagers and adults alike, despite its unsettling nature. The legend began in the 1980s, a time when cassette tapes and big hair were all the rage. A group of friends had decided to explore an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The house, known locally as the Whistler's House, had been vacant for decades, and its broken windows and rotting wood gave it a haunted appearance. But it wasn't just the dilapidation that fueled the rumor mill. It was the unsettling events that had supposedly transpired within those crumbling walls. According to the urban myth, strange occurrences began when the house was still occupied. Neighbors reported hearing eerie, disembodied whispers that seemed to drift through the trees at night. Some claimed to see shadowy figures moving in the windows, but when they approached, nothing was ever there. It wasn't long before the whispers evolved into something darker. Stories of people who vanished without a trace after stepping foot inside the house. As the tale goes, one fateful night, a group of adventurous teenagers, craving a thrill and a break from their mundane routines, decided to test their bravery. They wanted to debunk the myth and prove that the stories were nothing more than a fabrication. Little did they know, their decision would lead them to a horrifying encounter that would leave an indelible mark on their lives. The legend tells of a harrowing night when the group ventured into the Whistler's house, armed only with flashlights and their bravado. They thought they were prepared for a ghost story. What they were not prepared for were the sinister truths that awaited them. As the night wore on and the shadows lengthened, the boundaries between reality and nightmare began to blur, revealing a terror far beyond their wildest imaginations. The group of 5 friends, Jake, Emily, Chris, Sarah, and Mark, arrived at the Whistler's house as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and dance across the front yard. Despite their bravado, a sense of unease settled over them like a heavy fog. Jake, ever the leader of the group, pushed open the creaky front door with a theatrical flourish. The hinges protested with a groan that seemed to echo through the silent night. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the musty smell of decay. Their flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing walls adorned with peeling wallpaper and floors littered with broken glass and forgotten debris. The friends ventured deeper into the house, their footsteps creating a chorus of crunches and echoes that seemed to amplify the silence. They joked and laughed nervously, trying to keep the creeping sense of dread at bay. As they explored, they noticed the house was far more sinister than anticipated. The whispering began almost imperceptibly at first, a soft, almost indiscernible murmur that seemed to drift through the empty halls. Emily, the most sensitive of the group, was the first to notice it. She stopped in her tracks, her flashlight flickering as if reacting to the sound. She turned to the others, her face pale. "Do you guys hear that?" "Relax," Chris said with a forced laugh. "It's probably just the wind." But the whispers grew louder and more distinct, taking on a sibilant, mocking tone that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. The whispers seemed to call their names, each utterance dripping with malice and a sense of impending doom. Sarah, trying to lighten the mood, suggested they split up to cover more ground. Despite their earlier reservations, they reluctantly agreed. Jake and Mark took the stairs to the second floor, while Emily, Chris, and Sarah explored the ground floor. The air grew colder, and the sense of unease deepened as they navigated the labyrinthine hallways. Upstairs, Jake and Mark stumbled upon a room that was different from the others. It was small and windowless, with a single chair in the center of the floor. The walls were covered in what looked like old, faded scratch marks. As they approached the chair, the temperature dropped noticeably. Jake, trying to shake off the chill, joked, "Looks like someone was having a rough time here." Mark, his flashlight casting erratic shadows on the walls, squinted at the scratch marks. "These look like claw marks." "Weird, huh?" The whispers intensified, now clearly audible and echoing through the empty space. Jake and Mark exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter fading as the air around them grew heavier. Suddenly, the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening bang. They tried to open it, but it was locked tight. Panic set in as the temperature plummeted further, their breaths coming out in visible puffs. Downstairs, Emily, Chris, and Sarah had come across an old basement door. Sarah, ever the curious one, insisted they check it out. They descended the creaky stairs into the darkness, their flashlights revealing old cobweb-covered shelves and what appeared to be discarded furniture. The whispers followed them, now blending with faint, disembodied cries that seemed to come from all directions. In the basement, the air was thick with a palpable sense of dread. Chris found an old diary lying on a dusty table. He opened it, revealing pages filled with frantic scribblings and disturbing drawings. The entries spoke of torment and a dark presence that had taken hold of the house's previous occupant. The final entry was scrawled in a shaky hand. "They are here. They will never leave." A sudden crash upstairs made them jump, their flashlights flickering wildly. Panic surged through them as they realized they were no longer alone. The whispers turned into incoherent babbling, the air charged with a malevolent energy. The friends regrouped, their faces white with fear, and desperately tried to find a way out. As the friends huddled together in the dimly lit basement, the oppressive atmosphere grew thicker. They could feel an unseen presence closing in. The whispers now a cacophony of anguished voices. The diary's ominous warning seemed to come to life as shadows danced along the walls. "We need to get out now!" Emily shouted, her voice trembling. They raced back up the stairs, only to find the basement door had mysteriously vanished, leaving them trapped. Panic turned into frantic desperation as they pounded on the walls and tried every possible escape route. Meanwhile, upstairs, Jake and Mark had managed to break open the door to the small room they had been trapped in. The house seemed to have transformed, its layout shifting as if alive, leading them into unfamiliar territory. The walls, once faded and decaying, now appeared eerily pristine, with fresh paint and untouched furnishings. The friends reconvened in the hallway, their eyes wide with terror. It was as if the house was toying with them, its layout changing to confuse and entrap them. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing unsettling glimpses of faces in the shadows, faces that seemed to watch them with hollow eyes. In a final desperate attempt, they decided to confront whatever was tormenting them. Following a trail of whispers, they reached the center of the house where a large, ornate mirror stood against the wall. The mirror was covered in a thick layer of dust, and as they wiped it clean, their reflections appeared distorted and fragmented. Suddenly, the mirror's surface rippled like disturbed water, and an icy wind blew through the room. The friends stared in horror as the mirror began to show scenes from their worst fears, dark, shadowy figures reaching out to them, their own faces twisted in terror. In a moment of sheer terror, they realized the whispers had stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. As they turned to each other, searching for answers, the mirror's surface shattered violently, sending shards of glass flying through the room. The fragments seemed to freeze in midair before falling gently to the ground, leaving behind a gaping hole where the mirror had once been. In the eerie quiet that followed, the house seemed to exhale as if releasing a long-held breath. The temperature returned to normal, and the shadows receded. The friends, now completely disoriented, stumbled toward the front door, which had mysteriously unlocked itself. They fled the house, their hearts pounding and their minds racing. As they looked back, the Whistler's house stood silent and still, as if nothing had ever happened. The moonlight cast long shadows across the property, but the house itself appeared completely ordinary, almost inviting. Weeks later, each of the friends tried to put the experience behind them. However, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Strange occurrences began to happen in their lives. Objects moving on their own, chilling drafts in warm rooms, and unsettling dreams of the house. The terror they had experienced seemed to follow them, leaving an indelible mark on their lives.